All right, let's jump right in. So, when you think of Hyderabad, your mind probably goes straight to the massive Charminar, the super bustling bazaars, and obviously the biryani, right? But today we're diving into a much simpler, humbler little delight that literally defines the daily rhythm of this incredible city. Welcome to this explainer on the absolutely legendary Osmania Biscuit. Guys, this isn't just some baked good, it is a full-blown cultural phenomenon. We're going to look at exactly how this incredibly affordable, totally addictive snack went from its 1940s origins to becoming this global ambassador for Hyderabadi flavor.
Now, to really get the hype here, you kind of have to understand the sheer poetry of the experience. The folks at Cafe Nulofer hit the nail on the head when they say, the art lies in the dunk. Because honestly, you cannot talk about the Osmania Biscuit without talking about a steaming cup of Kadak Irani chai. They call this ritual the sacred dunk. You take this golden, buttery biscuit, right, and you give it a quick, graceful dip into that strong, slow-simmered tea. But, and this is absolutely crucial, you can't dunk it for too long or the whole thing just collapses into your cup. Total rookie mistake. You know, if you master that timing, you get this momentary transformation where the rich butter perfectly counters the robust tea. It is basically a melt-in-your-mouth masterpiece.
So, Chapter 1, A Tale of Two Origins. Where did this all actually begin?
Really? Where did this iconic 1940s biscuit actually come from? Well, we know for a fact it was named after Mir Osman Ali Khan, who was the seventh and last Nizam of Hyderabad. But the actual circumstances of how it was created, well, depending on which local baker or historian you happen to ask, you are going to get two wildly different, but honestly, equally fascinating stories.
Okay, so on one hand, we have this amazing tale of royal opulence at the Vikaji Hotel. The legend goes that the Nizam had this specific craving for a snack that perfectly balanced sweet and salty flavors to pair with his evening tea. So a local Parsi outlet in Abids whipped up the perfect cookie just for him. And get this, he loved it so much that a royal car was literally dispatched from his palace every single day just to fetch a fresh batch. But competing with that royal narrative is the Osmania General Hospital's dietitian invention, and funnily enough, historians actually tend to lean towards this one. The story here is that back in the 1940s, dietitians at the hospital, which, by the way, was founded by the Nizam, needed a high-energy, easily digestible snack for patients in recovery. They came up with this biscuit, and it was so wildly delicious that the patients, visitors, and the hospital staff started swiping them, totally depleting the hospital's supply. No way, right? But you know, the real takeaway here is that whether it was baked up in a fancy hotel for a king or in a hospital kitchen, the biscuit definitely didn't stay a secret for long. It spread like wildfire and quickly earned the nickname the poor man's biscuit. Why? Well, it was sold tax-free, it wasn't wrapped up in any fancy packaging at all, it was just kept in these simple glass jars at local cafes and sold for literal pennies. Because it was so affordable and had this unbelievably soft, powdery texture, it became the ultimate democratic snack in a city that's so famous for its royal, opulent history. Moving on to Chapter 2, The Rise of the Bakeries. Let's look at this growing legacy.
If we trace this timeline across the decades, it's pretty incredible to see how these huge, iconic institutions stepped up to perfect the recipe and make it famous everywhere. So, 1940s, the biscuit is born. Fast forward a bit to 1948 and Subahan Bakery is established. Now, they were originally famous for their bread. They even served bread to Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru back in the 50s. But eventually, they modernized and cooked up this highly coveted, top-secret Osmania biscuit recipe that absolutely dominates the local market today. Then, in 1953, the Karachi bakery was founded by a Sindhi migrant. They took the biscuit, packaged it up, and basically exported it, putting this local treat squarely on the global map. And by 1978, you had places like Cafe Nulofer launching, which really cemented that whole cafe culture. You know, the standing, the sipping, and that sacred dunking ritual that makes eating this biscuit a full-on social event.
Now, even with the massive scale of production we see today, the real soul of this biscuit is still anchored in how it's prepared. Take it from Muzaffar Khan over at Rose Bakery, who says baking on firewood enhances the biscuit's flavor and aroma, a tradition we still uphold today. And it's true. Talk to any authentic purist and they'll tell you that modern electric ovens they simply cannot replicate that rustic, slightly smoky undertone that a traditional firewood oven bakes right into the crust. It's a real game changer. So what exactly goes into this thing? Let's break down the anatomy of this sweet and salty symphony. You've got your core base, right? Flour, a really generous heap of butter, powdered sugar, and milk powder. That's what gives it that crazy, rich, crumbly texture. But the real magic? That happens with the unique additions. You've got salt, perfectly cutting through the sweetness. You've got custard powder, which is super interesting because it adds this distinct tenderness and just a tiny hint of vanilla. And then, occasionally, a light brush of saffron milk right on top for this beautiful royal golden finish. It's this exact chemical balance that makes it literally melt the second it hits your tongue.
All right, Chapter 3. Protecting a culinary legacy. How do we secure its future? To really grasp what's at stake here, we need to talk about what a geographical indication, or a GI tag, actually is. Basically, it's a type of intellectual property right. Think of it kind of like champagne from France, right? A GI tag makes sure that a product's name can only be legally used by authentic producers who are actually located in that specific region, using the traditional methods. It's absolutely crucial for protecting this heritage from, cheap, inauthentic knockoffs that are just trying to cash in on the famous name.
But here's the thing. Securing one of these tags is definitely not a walk in the park. A dedicated group of bakers actually tried to get a GI tag for the Osmania Biscuit back in 2014, but unfortunately that attempt failed. However, things are looking up. The state of Telangana is currently emerging as a massive contender to finally lock down these rights for both the Osmania Biscuit and Irani Chai. Right now, trademark consultants are actively gathering historical and technical evidence to prove that, hey, this isn't just some generic cookie on a shelf. It is the rightful, undisputed intellectual property of Hyderabad's culinary culture. And honestly, that legal protection is desperately needed right now. Why? Because the Osmania Biscuit is kind of a lone survivor standing in a graveyard of other fading culinary gems. Just look at these other classic Hyderabadi biscuits. You have the Chand biscuit, which is shaped like a crescent moon with a little hint of vanilla. The Fine biscuit, famous for its flaky, layered crust. There's the savory, spiced Car biscuit, and the super crunchy, bow tie-shaped Thai biscuit. I mean, decades ago, absolutely no tea time or wedding was complete without all 5 of these on the table. But today, local bakers are reporting that demand for these others has completely plummeted. They've been almost entirely overshadowed by the Osmania, and they're just quietly vanishing from the bakery shelves.
Which brings us to a really profound question to wrap up this explainer. With social media shifting consumer tastes at lightning speed, where everyone just wants the next big viral food trend every couple of months, are traditional, slow-crafted gems like the Osmania Biscuit actually going to survive the next century, or will they eventually just fade into history right alongside the Thai and Chan biscuits? It's a pretty stark reminder that culture isn't just something you read about in a textbook, it's something you have to actively preserve. And sometimes, preserving it just means taking a moment out of your busy day to sit down, sip a hot cup of tea, and appreciate a beautifully baked, perfectly balanced biscuit. Anyway, thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive. I'd love to know what you guys think about all this. And seriously, I highly recommend you go track down an authentic Osmania biscuit and try the sacred dunk for yourself.